Welcome. This is the Bball Postgame show for the Toronto Raptors at Los Angeles Lakers. And unfortunately for the Raptors, they forgot to show up in the first half. And this game turned into a shootout, which definitely favored the home side. Toronto was behind on rebounding. They let the Lakers have their way with open jump shots and got down in the first half. They came back in the second half to get this game tied at the end, but they couldn't pull it out as Kobe started getting hot in the fourth quarter. And despite shooting what ended up at 11 of 24, he had 31 points and a triple-double as he got his teammates involved while grabbing 11 boards, 12 dimes, and all around making Terrence Ross look like the third-year player that he is. Unfortunately, Toronto's problems didn't stop with Terrence Ross. Jordan Hill had a big game up against Jonas Valanciunas, where Hill had the 16.12 rebound double-double, and Jonas Valanciunas was 4 of 10 from the field for 9 points. He did grab 13 boards, and he looked like he was really putting the effort in, but for some reason the basket wasn't staying still for him. He was not finishing. Nick Young does what Nick Young does. And has done to the Raptors in the past. He scored 20 points on a very reasonable 6-11 from the field. And unfortunately, a lot of those were untimely. And Carlos Boozer, another player Toronto should have been able to corral from a defensive standpoint, got off for a 18.9 rebound night. And really, Toronto just didn't seem to have an answer to get stops tonight. Guys who had good games, Greivis Vasquez subbing in for DeMar DeRozan looked just fine. He had a nice night, 8 of 16 from the field, 19 points, generally played a nice game. Patrick Patterson came off the bench for 10 points and 13 rebounds, and he did what we would expect from him. Terrence Ross scored 20 points. He shot 8 from 12 in the field, and really at the end, you really was wishing it was Terrence Ross hoisting up those threes in the last minute, other than Kyle Lowry, who 1 for 8 from three-point range tonight, just couldn't hit it. And then Lou Williams took a shot in the closing minutes where Toronto was trying to get back into this game, and of course it didn't fall. He was 3 for 9, but he was really struggling with his shot from all game. And overall, 5 for 17 field for Lou Williams, not what we've been used to seeing from him. It wasn't a lack of points. Kyle Lowry, 29 points. It just took him 28 shots to get there. Lou Williams had 19 points, and Valanciunas did have 9 points. So just with the opportunities he had, Valanciunas should have had a lot more in this game. The guys who want to complain about refereeing have their case. We have our all-star, Kobe, getting the phantom foul call early in the game as he does his fadeaway and hands on the floor. Getting the tweet, the only problem was, and it was very clear in the replay, looked pretty clear live, no one was even close to him. He just fell on the floor, doing a fadeaway. He was pretty happy to take the free throw, though. Later in the game, when the game was on the line, coming in the final minutes of regulation, he kicks his leg out and draws the foul, scoring the bucket and going to the line. The Raptors have a legitimate complaint there. That's a point of emphasis of the league this year. Kicking your leg out is supposed to be an offensive foul. Those 2 points should not have counted. He shouldn't be at the line. It's really hard when a future Hall of Fame player does something like that. It's hard to get the call. The referees know that's wrong. It's still really hard to get that call. Toronto make all the complaints they want. They lost this game on their own. And I'm here with James Borbath, who was not a happy camper watching this game tonight. James, your take on the lack of effort we saw from the Toronto Raptors tonight?
Well, in all honesty, I'm more upset about the Grey Cup than the Raptors, but this was our first glimpse into life without DeMar DeRozan, and with the abductor, whatever it's called, I'm not a doctor, basically doing the research on this injury, it would be very optimistic if DeMar DeRozan makes it back in 4 weeks, which was the report that was out there. Bottom line, though, he's going to be out for a long time, and I think part of the recipe for this team without DeMar yes, they're going to miss the scoring, and yeah, that wasn't a problem tonight, but the Lakers are one of the worst defenses in the league currently, so the Raptors were always going to get their points. But I think on the nights where the Raptors were getting away with not playing great defense for most of the night and still winning games, without DeMar DeRozan, I don't think that's happening anymore. And this team has to realize that and address that and come to play. And you mentioned about the three-pointers. I had thought this team had gotten over the fact of being smart about their use of the three-pointers. Tonight, that wasn't in evidence at all, as the stats you threw out there indicated. Some nights, it's not going to fall for you, and really, with what the Lakers have in their lineup, the only player where they have an advantage, and it would be the same if DeMar DeRozan was playing, Kobe Bryant's the only player that's better at his matchup. I think Kyle Lowry is better than Jeremy Lin. I think Jonas Valanciunas is better than Hill, and go up and down the lack of Laker talent, and you come up with the Raptors winning every matchup, but yet they had a really lackadaisical effort. And, maybe write this off to, they got some bad news. They've obviously come to terms with the fact DeMar's not going to be around for a long time. And sometimes that'll inspire a team, and sometimes it'll suck the life out of a team. Clearly, for the Raptors in their first outing, it sucked the life out of them, and they just didn't come with any effort. Drake, even, as a fan, I didn't like his effort. With no Jack Nicholson there, he didn't bring it either. I mean, it was all around a failure tonight.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't come out flat and win games, even when you have superior talent. Sometimes things are just going to go the wrong way at the end. What really emphasized the lack effort from Toronto, the Lakers are not a stellar rebounding team, and they all rebounded Toronto in the first half 23-17, and they earned it. They were outworking Toronto at every turn. And Toronto, in many ways, was helping this out. They were 1 from 11 from three-point range in that first half. And they kept going in the second half until they were 1 of 14. Eventually, that did turn around. They have good shooters. But you can't get yourself in that big a hole. When you get yourself down early to a team that is on its home court, that's lost 4 in a row, that's 1-8 at home, that has Kobe Bryant on it, who's a very proud guy, and a few guys who are very good scorers. Nick Young, Carlos Buers, those guys can score the ball. They gave them hope. Toronto tied this game at the end. They had their chance to win this game at the end. They just left too much out there to a home team that was too desperate to win. They're going to have to come up with effort. And really, this is not different. We've been watching this team win, playing bad halves and bad quarters, or even bad 3 quarters, with phenomenal third-quarter efforts or fourth-quarter efforts. Those type of games do catch you. Eventually, you're not going to pull through. Now, one of the things that's really pretty to watch is some of the plays Kobe did make in this game. James made a really nice tweet on this that Terrence Ross was making Kobe look 5 to 7 years younger. And maybe there's an element of truth to that, but Kobe made some plays that would remind you of the Kobe of 5 to 7 years ago, where he was very smooth with the ball, made fakes that left Terrence Ross look like a rag doll on the court, completely confused and no idea where Kobe was headed. And maybe Kobe got a foul call and some of that he didn't deserve, but Terrence Ross was so funny, I think the referee had to blow the whistle. Unfortunately, that isn't why the Toronto fans were watching the game. At least I don't believe that's why. We really were hoping to see Terrence go. DeRozan's out, probably for a month, maybe a little longer. This is my time to shine. And although we did shine from a shooting standpoint, we were really hoping to see a little more maturity on the defensive end of the court in this game.
Yeah, but Terrence has had opportunities before. Like, you can argue that the Rudy Gay trade was a huge opportunity for Terrence because it moved him into the starting lineup, and he had a lot more given to him in terms of minutes and time on the floor and stuff like that. And for whatever reason, Terrence Ross just he's very frustrating. There was one sequence in this game that sums up Terrence Ross to me perfectly. He comes back, he hustles on defense, he makes a tremendous steal, and then he makes the most boneheaded pass and turns the ball over in basically the same sequence. That's Terrence Ross in a nutshell. You never know what you're going to get, and clearly he came into this league touted as he was going to be this defender and he was going to be a defensive stopper at some point. I haven't seen him stop anyone who's an elite player that he's matched up with. It just hasn't happened. Even if you go back to the game versus Cleveland, it was DeMar DeRozan that shut down LeBron James. It wasn't Terrence Ross. And, I mean, he's a very frustrating guy to watch night in and night out. And, I mean, yes, there's obvious talent there, but there's also obvious mistakes that by the time you get to year 3, we really shouldn't be seeing. And I mean, Jonas has his troubles too. There's no doubt about that. But I think everyone comes to accept that big guys, it takes a little longer, and you're willing to wait a little longer on big guys because, quite honestly, and this isn't just for Terrence Ross, it's for anyone that plays on the wing in the NBA. Guess what? There is a dime a dozen worth of guys that play the wing. There'll be a whole crop of new guys that come out in the draft next year that can play the wing and that will be decent to great players in the NBA. And it happens almost every single year. It's not a position where there isn't a glut of talent. I think the two positions where you struggle to find talent are at center and at point guard. Even though apparently we're playing in this new positionless NBA, Steve, I still think we have point guards and we have centers, and they're hard to find.
Well, I think it's really apparent when you take a team like the Pacers, which has been playing without a point guard and was sharing the ball and using Lance Stevenson to create offense for them, and now this year they're struggling to create offense. The point guard is a really important spot on the floor, and you need someone who can create. Detroit's got the same problem with Brandon Jennings, who's really more comfortable with the ball in his hand and creating for himself. Toronto solved its point guard problem with Kyle Lowry to a large extent. It's been one of the main reasons why this team's turned around. And you do give guys like Jonas a lot longer leash than you give a wing player coming into the league, because big guys who can hit free throws and can block a few shots, they're just not that easy to find. And Toronto's got a world of experience at that, bringing through 7-footers who just couldn't do the job. There's just not enough talent at that size to go around. It is disappointing to see the consistency of Terrence. The frustrating part is you see how good he can be when he focuses in, and how you get a young guy like Terrence to provide that focus in those big plays on a continuous basis instead of hit and miss throughout, not just game to game, but within the game. Really has to see that Casey Gossett tears hair out from time to time. Whatever.
Oh, yeah. He's totally frustrating on so many levels. Another thing that'll be interesting, because we're talking a little bit about Jonas, and one of the best advocates for Jonas on this team has been Kyle Lowry, and I hope that continues with DeRozan out of the lineup, because Lowry was doing a heck of a lot to try and help Jonas get scores and get points, and I worry Kyle Lowry is going to try and do something similar to when Chris Bosh was out. TJ Ford would inevitably take it upon himself to try and score for himself and Chris Bosh not being there. And I hope Kyle Lowry doesn't fall into that trap, because he could easily do that. And tonight, by his line, the 1 of 8 from 3 and stuff like that, it is clear he was trying to score more. But I thought early on the Raptors, even though Jonas wasn't successful all the time, they had a good game plan by going inside to him and getting easy looks inside. And I thought it was something that if they had stuck with it, maybe Jonas would have came around and maybe it would have worked out for them. But they went away from that and they went back to chucking up three-pointers. And I don't know, maybe when you're out there playing with Nick Young, it's just contagious and it just infects everybody because, you know, clearly that guy, he's shooting no matter what. And he even does it with Kobe on his team, which shocks me because I would be afraid Kobe would kill me. But Nick Young, he's not afraid of anything. He's shooting the ball no matter what. It doesn't matter. And you know what? Lou Williams is kind of got like that for the Raptors a little bit. Like I saw a joke on Twitter. I think it was Chris Walder who writes for BR and Raptors HQ. He was saying, you know, it's becoming a tradition that every Raptors quarter ends with Lou Williams playing in isolation, shooting a three-pointer, and it's kind of true when he's out on the floor. That's exactly what we see to end quarters. And great if he makes it, not so great if he doesn't.
Yeah, the concept of running out this, and it's an NBA disease. At the end of games, end of quarters, you'll see the team's running the clock out to get what is in effect the lowest percentage shot on the floor, and so many teams do this.
But the unfortunate thing is the running the clock part out is fine, but you can also run pick and rolls off that. You don't have to just like jack up a three-pointer, and that's the thing overall in this league that disturbs me. It seems like everyone thinks they can shoot a three-pointer in this league now. We have centers shooting threes. We have everybody and their brother shooting threes. I'm sure if Drake got in the game tonight, he would have shot a three. It's just, it's getting to be, you know, it's taking away from the game to some extent, and I don't know if I like it as much as a game because one of the things that I think most people like in basketball is slam dunks and taking it to the rim strong. And a lot of guys don't do that anymore. A lot of guys have taken up the Vince Carter philosophy as he aged, and they've gone away from the slam dunks, and then they fall in love with three-point shots. And to some extent, that's Terrence Ross, too, who we talked about earlier. Terrence Ross loves shooting that three-pointer, but boy, oh boy, he's not missing many slam dunks when you drive. And I think, you know, driving to the basket is something that needs to happen more in this league in general. And that's another thing with DeRozan out. DeRozan gets to the line a lot. Like he's one of the primary guys that gets to the line. Lou Williams can do that at times, so can Kyle Lowry. But where do the Raptors get back those, you know, 8 to 12 foul shots that they're going to get from DeMar DeRozan on a given night? And that's the question because not only does it take people driving the lane, but DeMar DeRozan had finally earned that respect. He talked about all those phantom calls that Kobe Bryant was getting. Well, DeMar DeRozan hasn't reached that level yet, but he is to the point where referees respect him and he gets the calls that are deserving and maybe a couple that aren't deserving. And the Raptors really don't have that guy right now other than, you know, Larry Ken at times and Lou Williams, but I think there's something to it when you become an all-star and referees, all of a sudden you get that all-star attached to your name, calls become a little easier to you.
It's going to be a challenge. They did get 31 foul shots in the game, which is fine, but it's going to be harder for them to get the calls low DeRozan because DeRozan is a mid-range and in player who needs to drive and needs to create contact. Lou Williams can do some of that, and really with DeRozan out, he needs to do more of that. It really would have helped when you're shooting 5 of 17 in a game. It's really time maybe to put that jump shot in your back pocket. And we saw what he did on one play where he made the really nice drive and dunk. And we've seen him do this a couple of times this year. Lou Williams has hops. The guy can get up. He's fast. If we could get him to mix it up a little bit from the three-point line to maybe some drives into the paint, especially with DeRozan out, they need that change of pace in their game. They can't. This team's not good enough to just sit there out in the perimeter and hoist threes all game. They need more than that.
And that's the thing. Tonight wasn't a TSN game because they had the Grey Cup, but the Jack Armstrong expression of playing the city game. Not as many guys in this league want to play that city game anymore. They like the pretty three-point shot and the posing and this and that. You know, when you go inside, you're going to get knocked around, and it's not going to be fun, and it's physical and all that. But it's a lot easier. Like for all the talk of how beneficial the corner three is because of our analytics and all of that. I got news for you. The corner three still isn't easier to make than a slam dunk. Still isn't easier to make than a foul shot. And, you know, teams, most nights in the NBA, regardless of the teams, the team that scores the most points in the paint usually wins.
It's a huge advantage. Now, Toronto's got a very tough matchup coming where the Lakers are underrated because they have played the toughest schedule in the NBA so far. They haven't really had an easy game all season. They haven't played a bottom-ranked team yet. And the fact that they're sitting at the bottom of the West is a little unfair. But when Toronto travels to Sacramento, now that's a team that started hot, had a cold spot, but they're back hot again. And assuming DeMarcus Cousins is over the flu that was bugging him a few days ago, and pretty safe to assume he'll be better by Tuesday night. And Rudy Gay's in good shape to go. And they got a couple of better points.
Physically better, Steve. Mentally, we're not sure with DeMarcus.
Actually, I'd say DeMarcus has been better this year. The big highlight for DeMarcus' season so far is pulling his coach back in so he didn't get a technical foul. DeMarcus thinking it'll be bad. That's good. But actually, I'm not really worried. Everyone worries about DeMarcus Cousins as the big, tough matchup for Toronto. Jonas Valanciunas can deal with DeMarcus Cousins from a physical standpoint. It's not the overwhelming matchup that it's perceived to be. And if you look back to the FIBA World Cup this summer, both Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins fouled out against Jonas Valanciunas when Lithuania played the U.S. And Jonas can play against those players. Now, it'd be real nice if he could actually hit the shot that's 2 feet from the bucket because that would make a big difference to the Raptors' ability to score. But he's not going to be overwhelmed by DeMarcus Cousins. I really think the biggest concern Toronto has coming up on Tuesday night is how does Terrence Ross deal with Rudy Gay? Because how Terrence Ross played tonight isn't going to cut it in Sacramento. Sacramento's a better team, and Rudy Gay would be more than happy to put down 25 or 30 points on Toronto when they visit them.
Yeah, and I mean the Raptors, they could go the James Johnson route, but James Johnson, since he's come back from his injury, hasn't had all the offense rolling like he did when he was on that magic carpet ride at the beginning of the season where he could do no wrong. I think the offense has kind of left him a little bit. And the Lakers, when he was out there tonight, the Lakers were very smart. They dared him to shoot the three-pointer. And guess what? James Johnson, like everyone else on this Raptors squad, was more than happy to take it. And that's not what you need from him, and that's not what you want him doing. And Dwayne Casey, at times, I think, is going to have to make a decision of, do I go with James Johnson because I need him for his defense and sacrifice Terrence Ross' scoring, or do I leave Terrence out there and hope and pray that he can get the job done? But the bottom line is if Terrence Ross can't score more than the guy he's guarding because of his own deficiencies on defense, he's not helping anyone.
No, and actually the right way to play James Johnson is, unfortunately, letting him hit the three-point line and giving him 6 feet of space because he can't resist shooting the three most of the time. And he's a solid 20% from three-point range. So that's really a pretty good shot to be given someone who's that adept at hitting it. And when he drives to the hoop this year, he actually made some really nice comments about why he's finishing around the rim so much better. He picked up pointers from Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan in the summer about how to protect the ball going to the hoop, where if you remember him from a few years ago, he would get in there and he'd get bumped around and then the ball would go off the rim and they'd lose it. Now he's going in a lot smarter and protecting the ball and moving it to the side and only coming in to finish at the very end. And he's finishing at a wonderful rate around the rim. The Lakers did their best to make sure he didn't get those opportunities. They let him play on the outside.
Yeah, it's almost like when DeMar and when Lowry take it to the basket, they almost take it like a running back in football, and it's like protecting the ball so it won't get stripped, and then at the very end, going up to the shot. That was one of the things people complained about DeRozan's handles, but he's always been able to get to the rim and protect the ball fairly easily once he gets in stride and he's driving. That was never a problem for him. And Kyle Lowry's great at that too. Plus, Kyle Lowry being the size that he is, that's a challenge for players because of the levels he's going at. It's difficult, but it's not going to be easy for the Raptors without DeMar DeRozan, and I think that was the lesson to take from this. The idea of taking bad teams for granted can't exist. The margin for error has become a lot slimmer for this team without DeMar DeRozan, because even on nights when DeMar struggled and he didn't have the greatest shooting nights, DeMar DeRozan knew when he needed to score. When this team had lulls, that's when DeMar DeRozan would make his shots most times. Even on nights he was doing really bad, he had that, for lack of a better term, stage presence to know when his team needed a bucket, or if he couldn't get a basket, to get to the line like we were talking about earlier. He was really growing into learning what it is to be a star player in this league. And Kyle Lowry can be that at times, but he has a lot of other things on his plate to deal with too. And it's a much different challenge for Kyle Lowry to try and do all of that as well. And you can run into, like I said, T.J. Ford's an excellent example to look at when he used to play without Chris Bosh. Some nights he was lights out and he could put the world on his back, but more often than not he wasn't, and he pushed his offense at the detriment of not just himself but the team around him, because the ball wasn't moving, because TJ was putting it on himself to score. And I think Kyle Lowry could fall into that trap very easily right now with what's going on. But this is one game. Let's give Kyle the benefit of the doubt and see, we've got this road trip here with 2 more games on the road. Let's see what we get from Kyle in Sacramento and in Utah before we go making that comparison to TJ Ford. But it's a natural comparison that jumped out at me.
It's a tough transition. Both Kyle Lowry and DeMar benefit because the other person's on the floor. You can't double team both of them. One of them has to be left with single coverage. So you get better shots. Grievous Vasquez had a really nice game and is a really good compliment. Actually, he played well tonight. He fit into that role really well. But he's not going to demand a double team. They do not have to put that kind of effort out there. And Grievous will get his points, but he's not the guy who's going to defeat you in a game. He's the guy who's playing off of the other guys who draw the attention. This is something Kyle's going to have to get used to. It's a big adjustment period for the team. And apparently in that first quarter, bigger than they thought it would be.
And that is the thing. DeRozan does draw those double teams, and that changes everything in terms of the offense. Now teams are probably more likely to play Kyle Lowry to pass the ball and almost encourage him to shoot it like he was tonight. Terrence Ross or Lou Williams, who was getting those open corner threes, Now all of a sudden, they're not the third or fourth option. Now they're the second or third option. So that they're not going to get those open looks anymore. For everyone, it's like they have to go up a level, and it changes things for a lot of guys, and they're going to have to get used to that. It's like we said, DeMar DeRozan, look, if he's back in 4 weeks, great. I think that's a little soon. I looked up this injury online, and I mean, it can be anywhere from 4 weeks to 3 months. Like there's cases where it's been 3 months for people. So, and there's a chance he might need surgery with this too. So that will change the prognosis considerably. So we'll see how it all goes. But bottom line, the Raptors have to learn quickly how to live without DeMar DeRozan in the lineup for the foreseeable future, because they've got off to this great start, but it can evaporate really quickly. Thankfully, they're in the Eastern Conference, where I don't think this is like a situation like Oklahoma City has, where it could cost them the playoffs. It's not going to, but it does make things a lot harder for them night in, night out.
Yep, there's no way around it. It's going to be a little tougher. I'm expecting this team to find its way. This game, like other games this year where they didn't put out a good effort in the first half, is where it's disappointing. In this case, hopefully it's taken as a lesson where they figure out that they just have to step it up from the start. They can't coast through these games and take the teams that aren't doing as well so lightly. Good road trip. It's good that they're doing this away from home, away from the lights. It's good that they're doing these 3 games before they have to face Cleveland on their first game back in Toronto. Cleveland will not feel any mercy for Toronto on their arrival back home.
Cleveland will be mad at Toronto when they return home, because Cleveland, I think, was slightly embarrassed by that loss at the hands of the Raptors.
I believe Cleveland was immensely embarrassed by that loss to the Raptors. They were basically outscored by 40 points after their hot start. And that's not the way a LeBron James-led team usually goes, although we have seen collapses before. That's really something that's out of character. There's too much talent in Cleveland to play that badly again. But I think we'll see over the next couple of games just how quickly the guys on Toronto can figure things out. They should play better on Tuesday, but it's a better team. The game against the Jazz, they do have a lot more talent than the Jazz have. The Jazz is a very, very young team that's still figuring things out, not expected to do well this season. It would be very disappointing if Toronto lost a game in Utah at this point in Utah's development.
But Utah had a really good effort when they did play the Raptors with DeRozan. They played really well when they played at the ACC. So, I mean, that's the thing. You just can't take anyone for granted or lightly anymore. I guess that's the lesson for the Raptors in this. And even when DeRozan gets back, I mean, keep that mentality. You really shouldn't be taking people lightly. I mean, this team is very good, but, they're also a team that they've proven, like, when they come up against tougher opposition, they can win their share, but they also can lose their share. I think, the game against the Mavericks, up until DeRozan went out, they were still struggling in that game with him. So, it's a good lesson to learn, and, it might be something that, I guess the positive in this, what you're looking for, is for guys to play without DeRozan and improve their games, so when he's back, you have a more talented team behind him than when he left. And that's something that I think, a team like Oklahoma City over the years has benefited from when Kevin Durant's been out of the lineup. I think Russell Westbrook is a much better player because of the fact that he's had to lead his team without Kevin Durant for long stretches of games. So, that's the hope. And obviously, you can't get away from the fact this is going to tell a lot about Terrence Ross at the end of the day, because he's going to be the one that is going to be the focus, I think, for fans in this, and I think for the Raptors as well, to see what exactly they have in Terrence Ross, because I don't think they're sure, and they shouldn't be.
Well, it's a great test for a lot of guys. I agree. I think this is Terrence Ross's moment to show that he has developed, that he's more than just a three-point threat on the outside, and he can play both ends of the court and show some consistency. The talent's all there, like with a lot of young players. It's all between the ears. We'll be back again on Tuesday night following the Sacramento Kings Toronto Raptors game, and hopefully we've seen the team find a bit more cohesion without DeMar DeRozan, because it's going to be a while before he's back. Amount exactly unknown, but it's not going to happen fast. We've got that for sure. We're going to be probably looking January at the earliest before there's any chance of seeing the rotation back to what we were used to seeing through the first 15 games of the season.
And heaven forbid, like, someone else goes down too in this. Like, that was something that kind of popped up tonight, because Amir went down that one time, and who was it? Jonas tweaked his ankle as well. So it's like, if it all stays together, that's one of the things, like, as good or bad as you can be, injuries can derail a season for any team faster than anything.
Hey, there's no guarantees in the NBA, and there wasn't one single team that felt sorry for the Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook-less Thunder and didn't lay a beating on them at every opportunity. Toronto will not be treated any different. They have to figure it out on their own. This is Steve Brotherston, editor of Pro Bball Report, and James Borbath signing off. We'll see you again in a couple of days.